This is a special presentation from UFC Fight Pass. Step into our world at UFCFightPass.com.
Oh, yes. Step into our world for UFC Fight Pass's extra rounds. We are live inside the Pearl at the Palms here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm TJ DeSantis along with Jason Anik, the bully Bilal Muhammad, and Michael Chiesa hanging out with you as we get ready for UFC 296. And for Michael Chiesa, getting ready for LFA taking place right behind us.
Yeah, a little doubleheader. I was just telling you guys before the show started, the last time I was in here at the Pearl with an octagon in center stage was my tough finale in 2012. So a lot of nostalgia in this building for me.
It's a great fight venue, too. Like, a lot of people don't think that theaters are a good place to put on fist fights, but that's not the case. I can't think of a better venue for fights.
There's not a bad seat in the house. You look how it's set up. Everything's stacked on top of each other. So it gets to the top, and you're kind of looking over the octagon a little bit. So it gives you a good vantage point. So
yeah, I feel like the higher up seats would be better than the cage side seats for sure.
It's almost like the Sphere.
Yeah.
I firmly believe like the first row of the second deck in the middle of the arena is where you want to be on fight night.
Absolutely. When you're on the floor, you're looking at the stage. It's like eye level, but if you're a few rows up, you can actually see the action.
You got to hope the camera guy doesn't come in your way. And you're like, bro, come on.
Dude, those fighter seats, tough to see from your guys' seats in the UFC fights. You know, it's flat on the ground. A lot, you know.
Yeah, I tell people, they're like, oh, let me sit next to you. I'm like, bro, you're better off up there 100%.
You're just looking at the TV.
Yeah.
You're always just looking at the Jumbotron. Yeah. You're always, if you're on the floor seats, just looking up.
So. Yeah, no matter what, I'm always looking at a screen, whether it's cage side or upstairs or at home. And Bilal Muhammad, you're going to be in attendance. Big fight tomorrow at T-Mobile in the main event. A fight that a lot of people believe you should be in. Bilal, obviously, you know, you're our number one contender here, but it is Colby Covington taking on the reigning champion in Leon Edwards. Bilal, we're going to start with you, man. Like, obviously, you went through the cut. You're the backup fighter. Where's your mind been, you know, possibly fighting, not fighting if everything goes well?
I mean, you know, I had a pretty good camp for both guys. It was weird because one guy's a straight-up grappler, one guy's a striker. So it was more focusing on Leon game plan-wise because I'm a big game planner. But I've had the guys, my 2 rounds, every time I spar, of a Colby guy coming in and just shooting on me. And this week was, you know, it was hard because I'm trying to, like, man, am I going to fight? Am I not going to fight? So I got to keep that mindset, and then I got to cut weight. And then after you cut the weight, that's when you usually get the prize of, finally, I get a fight. But there's no prize at the end of this right now. My only prize is waiting and seeing who I'm going to fight next and however long, because you never know with these guys. They're both very inactive. They take forever. And you can only imagine if Colby wins, how long his victory parade will be.
Well, either way, I can't wait because whoever wins, they're both southpaws. So I look forward to helping you in this fight. I want to see you beat both guys. So I'm throwing my hat in the ring. I want to join the remember the camp. So
I love it. Team Muhammad, baby. My brother, appreciate you. Yeah, no, exactly. That was the best part about this, that both of them were southpaw. So I was like just focusing on them and fighting a southpaw the whole time. So though now when I do fight them, that camp's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot smoother, and I'm going to stay in shape right now. So it's only going to be tougher for these guys because they're going to see a whole different level when I'm in there with them. Especially you're coming down to help me. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about this fight. We got Colby Covington and Leon Edwards. The fight almost really started at the press conference yesterday. And, you know, I'm curious in your guys' mind. We'll start with you, Michael. Has Leon avoided the, you know, mental warfare of Colby? Because it looked like he did get under his skin yesterday at the presser. Is that telling, you know, either way on what his mindset is?
I wouldn't say that Colby beat him in the mental warfare. If you talk about my dead father, I'm going to jump off that stage and try to kill you. So
hang on 1 second. Did your phone just ring? You might want to answer it. Maybe they need you for the main event tomorrow.
It didn't say Dana. So
okay, all right.
That would have been cool, though, right? You know, so I would have done what Leon did. I would just try to deflect. I'm not going to engage in Colby Covington's mental warfare because it's just so low. He goes to very low places, and he'll really reach to get a rise out of you. And I'm not going to engage in that, especially when on the back end of it, I get to fight the guy. So what's the point in getting into this war of words when we're going to get locked in a cage and we're going to fight? So for Leon, I don't blame him for the way that he reacted because I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, how personal is fighting for you, Bilal? I mean, do you get to a point where you dislike your opponent on a personal level, or do you just let it be sport all the way through?
Yeah, for me it's more sport all the way through. Like even my last 5 or 6 guys, I haven't had an opponent where I disliked or hated. My next opponent, for sure, I'm going to hate or dislike, especially if it's Colby Covington. But I haven't had one of those fights. I'm a guy. I love locker room talk. I love trash talk. I love that type of style. But like his is not that was unprofessional. That was pathetic. And I think he did that because he wasn't getting a rise out of Leon. Leon was just sitting there waiting, even with the whole buildup. There wasn't a big buildup between them two because Leon wasn't responding on Twitter. He wasn't responding to Kobe's antics. And, Kobe, he's not good at trash talk. He never was. So he had to dig a little deeper to try to get something out of him. And he thinks, I got you, and now I won. But I don't think he won. I don't think he got him. Like, he got Leon to throw a water bottle at him, but I don't think Leon's that dumb to go into the fight with a different mindset of, now I'm going to kill him. It's not the same Masvidal. I think Masvidal got emotional when he fought him, but they've had a lot of history. I don't think Leon's going to get emotional.
I think it's a little tough to tell exactly where the emotions may lie on fight night. I talked to Dean Thomas today. He actually thinks Leon can be a little bit of a slow starter, and it might benefit him if there's a little more juice. So I think I'm hopeful that Leon can compartmentalize that, but when you make that type of comment about his father who's passed, I mean, that I'm not surprised that got a reaction, and it should have a reaction. But he's a professional. I think he'll flip the switch.
Yeah, and everybody talks about how Colby's this nice guy off camera. I don't care how nice you are off camera. When you talk about someone's family, their religion, things of that sort, you categorize yourself in a very low place. And in the back end of our fighting careers, we're going to have our relationships and memories. Colby's not going to have any friends. When I hang him up and you hang him up, we're going to have a ton of friends. When we're going to fights, we're going to be able to, cross paths with our friends. Where Colby, he's just going to be a loner. I don't know if he cares about those types of things, but I think he will when it's all said and done.
The bottom line is this is the fight game. It's not necessarily the friends game, but you got to be able to conduct yourself out in front of the media the way that you would backstage, because Leon even said it yesterday, like, bring the same energy backstage, Colby. And Colby's like, I will. But you got to believe that he is flipping that switch, but there are consequences in your personal life. And like you said, when it's all said and done, if you were kind of a douche, excuse the phrase, but if you were that way throughout your fighting career, when you come back for Hall of Fame ceremonies and things like that, you're not gonna be a part of that fraternity.
And it's real life, right? Like, you're talking about Masvidal's kids, and he saw you outside of the cage, and he hit you. And people are like, why would Masvidal do that? I'm like, because there's a real words that you're saying about him. What you just said about Leon's father. If I lose tomorrow, I'm gonna look for you. I'm gonna wait for you backstage. I'm gonna get my licks in no matter what. And that comes with it. And you're going to have those people, even fans of Kobe of Leon or Masvidal, if they see you outside, it's going to make them want to do something to you as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It is pro fighting. It's not necessarily pro wrestling. You want to take, I think, part of your real world persona and maybe, ham it up a little bit. But at the same time, like, Colby is this different character altogether, and sometimes it benefits him, sometimes it doesn't. Let's talk a little bit more about the X and O's with Colby Covington, because he hasn't fought since that aforementioned Jorge Masvidal fight, March of 2022. A long layoff coming into a very high-stakes fight. I'm curious. We'll start with you, Michael. Your thoughts on the return of Colby Covington in this high-stakes stage. Do you think that the layoff will be a factor in how he performs?
He's performed well for being one of the more inactive guys at 170 pounds. I think for him that even if he has ring rust, he can lean on his conditioning. If he starts to feel a little rattled, he can't get his feet under him, at least he knows he can push a pace, try to rush some takedowns and lean on his cardio until he can start to feel more comfortable in there. So that's something that I would say is kind of like his ace up his sleeve. If he's feeling ring rust, lean on your conditioning. You can push a pace to get yourself in a comfortable situation to kind of gather yourself. But even for Leon, he's not the most active guy either. So it's going to be really interesting. I think as much as I dislike Colby and his personality and the things he says, I do recognize the skills. He's got an incredible chin. His conditioning is bulletproof. The only person with better conditioning is probably the guy sitting to my right. And he's a dog. I mean, he can get in there. He'll get in there and fight you tooth and nail. So the ring rust thing, we'll see.
Yeah, I think with his style, ring rust really wouldn't be a factor because he's in your face the whole time. Ring rust is more, I got to manage my distance. I got to manage my footwork. He really doesn't have that. He just moves forward, pushes you to the fence, shoots, throws his punches at your face to get you annoyed, and then just goes for a takedown. So I think the biggest thing for him is how's his chin right now. We've seen him get rocked his last couple fights. Masvidal rocked him. He had his moments where he could have finished the fight. Nate Diaz rocked Leon Edwards his last fight before that. And like Michael said, both these guys are inactive.
Mm-hmm.
I think Leon's had 4 fights since 2021.
Yeah.
Colby's had 2 fights since 2021. So for both of you guys, inactivity is a big thing.
You know, if this fight were, a year ago, 2 years ago, I would lean towards Colby Covington because, styles make fights. And, the Usman's fights for Leon Edwards, I didn't like those fights for Leon. But obviously we saw the Hail Mary head kick from out of nowhere and then a much different meeting between the two. Jason, I'm curious, has Leon sort of answered the question in regards to can he deal with a pressure-first sort of wrestler in the sense of what he did with Usman?
It's a good question. I think ultimately stuffing the takedowns of Colby Covington, how many takedowns is he going to stuff before his cardio gets compromised, right? I like Leon's frame. I like the upper frame more than the lower frame. But I do think he showed some ability. I certainly hope he's watching some of the film with Masvidal. Masvidal can certainly defend some of the takedowns, but ultimately he ended up on his back and stay there for a while. Do you expect Leon's going to be able to stuff these takedowns? And if he does, is that energy going to be there?
I think, a lot of people are looking at the third fight with Leon and Kamaru, and they're saying, oh, Leon looks so much better. I think Usman looked worse. I think he rushed into that fight too early, and he was very hesitant in the early rounds to shoot. And even with his takedowns, it was more reaching takedowns. Where Colby is, he's putting his knee to the ground, he's shooting hard at you a lot of times, but he's not good at holding you down. Usman is a lot stronger than Colby is, and he has a lot more power in his hands. And I think that Leon respected Usman's power a lot more. I don't think he's going to respect Colby's power. I think he's going to stand firm, plant his feet, and wait for a good counter shot or a counter knee as Colby's shooting in or entering on him.
I think when you go back to the second Leon versus Usman fight, I think the elevation played a role in how Leon just started to really fade, especially the rounds 2 through 4. Yes, he did win, but we have to acknowledge the fact that he did gas. And when you talk about Colby Covington, his cardio is weaponized enough that in this fight he can push a pace to try to get Leon to that space. And for Colby, the way that he shoots, it's the opposite of what you're supposed to do. It's head down, ass up. And it makes it to where he can't take damage. He buries his head in your crotch so you can't elbow him. And if you start trying to hit him, he'll start to pull your legs out. So his takedowns, his approach, they're easy to defend. But it's the fact that he's in such good shape that he can do it over and over and over and just hammer on it until you cave in and he gets a takedown. That's where he makes up for that lack of technique, I guess you could say.
Stylistically speaking, Colby is the wrestler, and when I look at wrestlers over the course of 25 minutes, I think that they're more likely to take a judge's decision because they can, determine where the fight takes place. Obviously, cardio is going to be a factor. Layoff could be a factor. Leon Edwards' power could be a factor. I'm just curious, is there a safe path to victory, you guys? I'll start with you, Bilal. Is there a safe path to victory for Leon Edwards if the decision is the way this fight ends? Because to me, leaving it in the hands of the judges for someone like Leon with a wrestler like Colby, it might not be the best way to try to attack this one.
Yeah, we saw with his last fight, he had a lot of good lateral movement, a lot of kicking, right? He kept the distance. But Colby, I don't think he's going to give him the space to kick. He's not going to he's going to be in his face 24/7. So I think for Leon, you're going to need those big moments of rocking Colby. And we've seen him get rocked. We've seen him fall to the floor and not getting stuck, especially when Colby pushes you on the fence, like a Masvidal, where he got annoyed. And we saw that frustration where he's like, ugh, instead of defending the takedown. Like, I think if Leon plays smart, stays calm in those situations, gets off the cage, lands a knee on the exit, then those big shots are going to play a big factor in the judging.
Let's go back a few years and let's talk about Leon Edwards versus RDA. Another southpaw, another wrestler type of fighter. Not like Colby, but there's shades of similarities. Things that Leon did very well in that fight. When RDA would press, he landed really good elbows. He cut RDA up he cut him up pretty bad. Sorry. And then and he had good clinch takedowns as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Leon hits a takedown of his own in this fight. If he can stuff a takedown and crawl up to the clinch, he's got nice little foot sweeps. He's got inside trips. There's a lot of things that he could do to throw Colby off his game plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and I think high-level fights generally come down to which athlete can make the high-level adjustments on the fly the best. And man, we're definitely in store for a fun one, to say the least. But Bilal, I'm kind of curious if you get the winner of this one. I mean, who do you prefer? You got unfinished business a little bit with Leon Edwards. I mean, I think most people want to try to punch Colby Covington in the face at one point or another.
Yeah, I think for myself, my legacy, I would want the Leon fight. We have the 2 longest winning streaks in the division. We have unfinished business, and he's the guy who beat Usman, who people consider the best welterweight. So legacy-wise, I think it would be Leon. But I think Me and Kiesa literally been calling out Colby for the last like 7 years, chasing him down, and I want to punch him because I do feel if he does lose his fight, he's gonna retire, and I'm not gonna get my hands on him or be able to get my hands on him unless I do see him at a steakhouse and I do end up slapping him. But yeah, I think I would want the Leon fight just because of the unfinished business and for my legacy to be considered one of the best to ever do it when you look at it in the end.
Let's take a look at the odds courtesy of DraftKings here. We look at Leon Edwards, the champion, minus 162 is the line on him. He's the favorite over Colby Covington at plus 136. Jason, your thoughts on the line? Do you think that it's priced accurately?
I do. I think I think there's a lot of action on both sides. I'm hearing a lot of different opinions on both sides. So I do think the line is where it needs to be. I was a little surprised to hear you just say that you think Colby's hanging him up after this.
I for sure
Win or
think
lose?
so. I think if he wins, he's staying. If he loses, this is how many more chances are they going to give UFC? The UFC gave him 3 shots at a title shot in 5 fights. They're not going to give him another shot, I don't think, if he loses this. And for him, he's not going to fight the tough guys in the division. He's not going to want to work his way back up to where he is now. I think he'll try to use his name and try to get a YouTube boxing match or something like that.
YouTube boxing, Colby Covington.
Yeah, he's such a good boxer.
We've seen Ben Askren do it, so
That's true.
I mean, you dangle that carrot in front of any retired fighter's face, they're going to take it.
Yeah. I'm curious, Mike, your thoughts. What is the game plan you think for Colby Covington? How does he try to win this fight?
Weaponize the cardio. He's got to fatigue Leon Edwards. Leon, I think that after the second Kamaru Usman fight, he hit another level. There's these weird instances as a fighter where, like if I was to relate this to myself, it's like when I finally got the win over Jim Miller, I naturally hit another level. Just finally getting that signature win took me to another level. Just it made me a better fighter. And I think for Leon, getting that rematch and knocking him out, it took him to another level. And to me, I kind of disagree with you. I don't think Kamaru looked that bad in the trilogy. I just think that Leon hit another level because he finally got that good signature win, avenged the loss. So for Colby, he's just got to get him uncomfortable. He's got to get him fatigued, and I think that Leon does have a little bit of that quit in him. And we saw that in the rematch with Kamaru. Even though he won, you could definitely tell that he was a little bit checked out. Contrary to what your brother said. It's not from the cloth from which he is cut. But I'm just assessing it as a fighter, as a competitor. I saw some quit in him. And Colby could show him the door. We'll see if Leon's willing to walk through it.
That was a great point you made. I think after I beat Wonder Boy, that was my level up. Because I was like, all right, I belong here now. Now it's like, I'm good enough to be with these guys. Wonder Boy was one. So maybe you are right. Maybe Kamaru didn't look that bad in the third fight.
Tomato. Hey.
But like Teddy Atlas, I think, talks about champions getting 30% better or whatever it is. So it's not. I understand your win over Jim Miller. You're not wrapping a belt around your waist, but certainly there are fights where leveling yourself up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a journey, too. We always talk about these guys getting in the UFC and then, trying to create a legacy. But even when you're punching your legacy into the record books, you're still growing and learning. And the confidence, I think, is something that you never fully get done gaining, even when you are, at the top 5, top 2, and even a champion and such.
And that comes with just having the right team around you, the right coaches around you, where they keep you humble, or they tell you, like, bro, you're not there yet. You're not the best. And we've seen it with guys kind of like McGregor. I feel like he has a lot of yes men around him. So you're not hitting the gym as much. You're doing the same normal things every time. For myself, after every fight, my coach, Lou Taylor, hey, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. I'm like, bro, we've been winning. We won 10 fights in a row, bro. Let me chill. But he's like, no, we got to fix this because the next guy's going to be better. Every single one.
That's just crazy when you say that. I've won 10 fights in a
Right,
row.
bro?
I just like when I hear that, especially sitting next to the guy with the 10-fight win streak. I mean, what the hell is going on, man? It's mind blowing.
Preach.
Make welterweight great again.
Yeah, I love the hat.
It used to be one of those things where if you won like 5 fights in the UFC, you were getting a title fight. Now you got to go in double-digit runs, and it's still not guaranteed. It's a crazy UFC world we live in these days in modern times. So.
Reminds me of Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
But he did get a bunch of title shots. Him and Khabib had this weird 5 fights that fell through in so many different ways. So it's not, you can't even use that as a comparison in this situation.
Exactly. That's what I tell people. They're like, oh, what happened to Tony? I'm like, no, he at least got a shot.
Yeah.
But even with Beneil Dariush, he didn't fight 5 ranked guys and beat 5 top 10 guys. I'm like, bro, there's not really anybody you could look at and say, man, look at his record, this, and this. I've been all the best guys. I've been at the top for so long. I've done everything right. Now I just weighed in, so there's nothing else I need to do. After this weekend, I'm going to know who I'm fighting for the belt.
Absolutely. You mentioned Tony Ferguson, Michael. Let's talk a little bit about Tony. He's got Paddy Pimblett in a fight that, when I talk to fans, they seem of one of two minds. Either it's, oh, this is really bad for Tony Ferguson, and this is going to be the last time we ever see him because Paddy's going to embarrass him, or this is the fight Tony Ferguson needs to change everything and make an example out of Paddy Pimblett. What are your thoughts and mindset going in on this fight between El Cucuy and Paddy the Baddy?
I love it, and it's because if you look at Tony, everybody's so hard on him because he's lost 6 in a row, but look at who he's fought. Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, like the people at the top of the heap, and even Bobby Green. I mean, he had his moments in that fight, and Bobby Green was starting to have this kind of Jorge Masvidal resurgence, kind of this grizzled vet that's been around, won a couple. If he would have won his last fight, he could have propelled himself into some big matches headed into next year, but this is the right fight for Tony because Paddy has a name. Tony needs to take a step back from the ranked fighters and just realize where he's at. And I like his chances in this fight a lot. If I was a betting man and I could bet, I would bet on Tony Ferguson because he's had moments in his last few fights where, not that he was winning, but we saw some glimpses of that Tony Ferguson. And we've seen Paddy the Baddy be a little reckless at times. His chin comes high. He'll come forward. And Tony's got reach. He's crafty. While I do think he didn't approach this fight the right way, doing the whole David Goggins thing,
right.
I would have liked to see him join a camp, get with the team. I think that's the one thing he's lacked these last few fights, but I love the fight.
So Tony Ferguson plus 250, Paddy Pimblett minus 310. We obviously know Jared Gordon beat him, Paddy Pimblett, but somehow didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I get a lot of varying opinions on how good people actually think Paddy Pimblett is as a mixed martial artist. What are your thoughts on him as an MMA fighter?
I don't think he will be a champion, but I think he's good. He got a lot of toughness to him. He's a gamer. He's not going to back down from anybody. I think, like you said, Scousers, they don't get knocked out. When you have a guy like that who's willing to stand in front of you and trade with you, those guys are tough to beat, and especially if he has a good ground game. In this matchup-wise, I do like it for Tony because Tony's been fighting the best of the best every single time. Paddy has a big name. You go out there, you beat Paddy. I don't want Tony to think that he's going to go on a title run now, but I want Tony to get a victory under his belt, not against a ranked guy. But I'm hoping that Tony, if he does win, he retires, gets a win, leaves the UFC that way, instead of, all right, now I'm going to go on another title run until they give it Arman Sarukian. And you're like, bro, come on, Tony, stop.
No to that one.
Yeah, I think Tony's a guy that identifies as a fighter, probably doesn't really know what life would be like without competing, and maybe he does like Iron Man or something, post-fighting, because this is a guy that's always going to have to test his physical and mental limits. And, getting back to the presser yesterday, we saw a lot of, good and bad rivalry talk, but I've never heard one fighter refer to another one as a sausage, and that's what Paddy Pimblett called Tony Ferguson. Michael, has anyone ever called you a sausage?
No, but I just feel like when you have an accent like Paddy's, you could just say anything.
Right.
Like if I was at a press conference and called someone a sausage, they'd be like, what the hell is that? But it's like his accent, it just makes it so funny. So he could say anything.
Dude,
and he's
exactly.
Gonna get away
He
with
puts
it.
the word lad on the end of everything, and it just works.
Yeah. I mean, I want to put it to the test. I just want to record random words from Paddy Pimblett and put it into AI and be like, "You stapler," you know what I mean? Like he could do anything like that. But it's gonna be a fun fight to say the least. Paddy Pimblett and Tony Ferguson tomorrow, all part of UFC 296. LFA taking place tonight here inside the Pearl at the Palms. Michael Chiesa on the call. It's a full circle moment for you.
Yeah.
Fighting here. You're back on the tough finale now, calling some fights. Anything for us to keep an eye on here tonight?
I mean, the main event's great. Asmat Bakoyev, the interim champ, versus Lucas Fernando, the current champ. This is a big fight. I mean, Bakoyev is solid. Coming into the LFA, he had a 13-fight finishing streak. So this is a guy that was really sparking guys. He had to overcome some health issues, kind of some adversities he had went through in his first few LFA fights. So he says he was a shadow of himself. He's back to a full bill of health. And Lucas is coming off the tail end of coming up short in Dana White Contender Series. So he's coming back to defend his title. Pedro Hizzo trained striker, really dangerous long strikes. He's got good knees. He's got some highlight reel finishes. So I expect this to be the epitome of a striker versus grappler fight. And it's just a stacked card with guys that have made it close to the top. Mitch Ramirez fought on Dana White Contender Series. He's back down to 155 pounds. I trained with him at Syndicate, so I'm excited to see him back down in his optimum weight class. So from top to bottom, as always, Mark Bieri put together a great card.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal, sort of lead into a big UFC card tomorrow as well. LFA, one of the best. I hate to even say regional promotion because it's much bigger than a show at the barn in the Midwest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always say it's the #1 feeder league to the UFC. And it's true. They've put over 300 guys in the UFC. 38 or 39 fighters alone this year they've gotten to the UFC. So they are turning people out. And if you look, Pantoja was an LFA.
That's right.
He was an RFA champ.
RFA champ and Brandon Royval, LFA veteran as well. So,
yeah, so they're turning out champions. Henry Cejudo, double champ. I mean, he held the legacy title at one point. So this is a very prestigious promotion. If you've held a title here for LFA, there's no reason why you couldn't be pegged as a future world champion. Yeah,
they could really take the LFA logo off the belt and just put Admit 1 to the UFC's octagon on it, and pretty much that tells the whole story. So
that's very true.
Awesome, Michael. We'll let you get to it. Appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, boys. I appreciate you coming on. Make welterweight great again, Bilal. It's good to see you, brother.
Love it.
Jason, it's good to see you, my guys. And as always, TJ, I'll see you at the next Fight Pass Invitational.
Absolutely. There he is, Michael Chiesa, kind enough to join us here on Extra Rounds as we get ready for UFC 296 tomorrow at T-Mobile Arena. We've already talked about the main event, Colby Covington challenging the champion, Leon Edwards. And we just had Michael drop a line about the FPI. Fight Pass Invitational was on Sunday. Now, Claudia Gadelha, you're going to join us here on Extra Rounds. Talk a little bit more about the Fight Pass Invitational. If you don't know, submission grappling has been the fastest growing combat sport over the last few years, and UFC Fight Pass has been your home for it. And if you need evidence, look no further than last Sunday's Fight Pass Invitational card. Claudia, how are you?
I'm doing amazing.
We're coming off a phenomenal event, submission grappling at its finest. Some really, phenomenal stars invaded the Apex. We had a phenomenal main event. Felipe Pena taking on Nicholas Marigali. Co-main event, Nicky Rod against Yuri Samoish. Obviously, I'm partial to submission grappling. You are too, being a fighter and a jiu-jitsu practitioner. But I do feel that submission grappling really kind of is the combat sport of the future.
I think so too. You guys saw the success of the Invitational. Like, the event was so exciting, and I think we only keep getting better every time. I've been with the UFC team, the UFC Fight Pass team, for about 6 months, and we're investing in the athletes, investing in the events, and I think we're just getting started. Like last weekend, we blew everybody's mind with the rule set, with the fighters we matched together. So I think we are on the right path.
Yeah, the FPI is available for you now, encore presentation anytime over at UFC Fight Pass. And one thing I like a lot about the Fight Pass Invitational, Claudia, is the fact that the show as a whole hasn't been married to one rule set. They've been playing with things. We saw points this last time around. What were your thoughts on the rule set and how it played out?
I love it. Like, I never sat down to watch a grappling event and been so excited like I was for the last event, because there was action every second of it, right? Because the negative points.
Yeah.
So if you go to a IBJJF jiu-jitsu event, usually you wait 2 minutes for something to happen, and it's kind of boring because you're waiting for something to build up, to see a sweep or to see a guard pass. For the UFC Fight Pass Invitational 5, we saw action every second of every match.
Yeah.
And we saw the fighters getting very tired because they're not used to that pace, because they're not used to get pushed that hard and that fast. So that's what it was so exciting to me to watch. And I competed a lot of jiu-jitsu before I fought MMA. I'm a third-degree Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, and I won 3 worlds, 7 nationals before I started competing MMA. So I'm very passionate about jiu-jitsu. And when I retired from MMA, and I was like, oh, there's an opportunity here to help this show to be bigger, I was very excited about it.
For me, being a mixed martial arts fan, everybody loves knockouts, right? I'm not going to try to sell someone on saying submissions are more entertaining than knockouts, but actually, you know what? I am going to try to sell you on it, because think about this. Anybody can knock someone out in a slam or quote-unquote lucky punch, but when you get someone in a submission hold and you make them either go unconscious or go, oh, you caught me, that is the most alpha thing in the world, I would think. And I like watching it play out, especially at the high level. We've seen some stars, really establish themselves on the submission grappling scene. Jason, you and I had a chance to interview Gordon Ryan during IFW this last year, and we all caught up with him at New York. I'm curious, Jason, what needs to happen in submission grappling for you to go from a mixed martial arts fan to more of a guy who's going to sit down and go, you know what, I do want to watch jiu-jitsu?
Well, it's interesting, Claudia, you just sold me a little bit, too, with your excitement, to be honest. But even mixed martial arts, for someone like me who grew up really in football, basketball, baseball, those professional sports, even MMA, you look 5 years ago compared to now, it's much more popular than it was. So hopefully the submission grappling can sort of follow that path a little bit. But I will say, there's an event tonight, Karate Combat, Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis. There was going to be grappling with George St. Pierre and Gordon Ryan on the same card. So I do feel as though with some of these, whether it's regional or smaller events, getting that star power to just get the eyeballs on there originally, I think, because you can be sure I would have been tuning in to see Gordon Ryan fight, having met him, right?
Yeah.
Truthfully, I have seen him compete very little in my life. So.
Well, he's probably the best out there right now, so definitely one to pay attention to. But also, George St. Pierre wanting to get back involved. We saw, a UFC veteran on the FPI card and Hannah Goldie. There's star power from the UFC, I think, maybe fighters that are maybe wanting to sort of spread their wings and get involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or fighters that can no longer compete in mixed martial arts or don't want to compete, post-retirement from MMA, there's a way to get involved. And, if GSP is able to get on the mat, like that's going to be a huge thing. Claudia, do you feel like more fighters, the level of George St. Pierre, these icons and legends, maybe come out of retirement and do jiu-jitsu?
I think so. The pressure is there. Like you competing for the UFC, right? But you're not getting punched in the face, kicked in the head. It's different. Jiu-jitsu still hurts.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but it's way different than getting concussions and kind of like not having a lot of longevity in life. That's what I look for. That's why I retired at 32.
I mean, jiu-jitsu definitely hurts when Wagner Rocha is the one standing in front of you, too. Wagner was on the card, and he's a tough out for anybody. He makes the gentle art hurt a lot, and it's a lot of fun. Again, the FPI available for you now. Encore presentation anytime over at UFC Fight Pass. Claudia, when can we expect another FPI day?
So March. We're going to have another one in March, and we're very excited. We're getting together and kind of understanding what we're going to tweak in the rule set to see how we can make it even more exciting. Like the jiu-jitsu rules were built in the 60s, So like when we start tweaking things to what people like to see now, especially seeing martial arts like the UFC and Karate Combat, like we want to see exciting things, So tweaking the rule set, I think it's gonna make a lot of people excited about jiu-jitsu, and maybe we'll see guys like you in there, like
for sure, yeah.
And and you mentioned Hannah Goldie. I was very surprised with her ground game from her back. In the FBI, I was like, I didn't know she had such of a good guard, and I was surprised seeing an MMA fighter playing guard and against a jiu-jitsu opponent,
right,
and doing it so well. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with the future of FPI, and March is the next one.
Awesome. And that's the thing, too. You mentioned Hannah. Like, the odds of Hannah Goldie ever pulling guard in an MMA fight, not going to happen. You know what I mean? But in a jiu-jitsu match, you definitely get to see different sides of athletes. Bilal, have you done much submission grappling, coming up through your MMA career?
I haven't, but like you said, I'm excited about it. I want to do it because I'm not going to get punched in the face to do it. So when I do see fighters doing it, I'm like, I want to do that. I want to try that because I'm competitive. And it's a place where I could jump flying triangle or something, and I won't take that risk in the UFC because a loss in the UFC, you get punched in your face or doing a flying triangle, messing up. But over here, it's like I do want to show another side of myself because I am really good on the ground, and I want to show people, hey, I could play guard. I could play jiu-jitsu too, even though a lot of people don't see that in the octagon.
But you train with killers. You train with Gilbert Burns, Luque Vicente. Like, they're so good on the ground that I'm pretty sure your ground game is pretty solid. So, like, as a fan and as a former MMA fighter, I want to see guys like you in there showing different skills that we can't see in the octagon.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, I think that's important about the FPI is it's another platform for these young Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stars to go out and actually get paid and compete. Because for the longest time, Jiu-Jitsu has been a sport where, you compete a little bit, but you're really just trying to do some advertising for instructionals and seminars and whatnot. But now we're actually seeing a circuit where these athletes can compete and try to get their hand raised and make some money in the process.
Yeah, that's why I started fighting MMA, actually. My dream was to be a Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And I saw there was no money there. They offered me an MMA fight, and there was a little bit of money in there. I was like, okay, I'll take it. So then I went that path and never looked back in jiu-jitsu until now.
I know John has put on the gi for like 2 training sessions with Pahumpa down there in South Florida.
Yeah,
what about you?
I don't know. No, not me.
No?
I mean,
Never?
Pahumpa's offered to like build out his garage and give him privates. John doesn't love being in one's guard. He also talks about like the mental component. There really is mental gymnastics that really, and so I think for him, I remember when he was training, he would just, Pahumpa would be like, oh no, you missed that next sort of, and he would get frustrated. But yeah, man, I don't know, man. Maybe a little sparring for me above grappling.
I mean, what would your submission hold of choice be? Like, do you got a name for it? You got a finisher?
Yeah, no. Well, breaking someone's arm,
right?
In that spot, has to feel great. And also choking somebody out to the point where you feel them alive and then they go to sleep has to feel incredible. Okay. But I don't know, man.
You are a little sadistic. You got that streak in you a little bit. Maybe.
I'm looking at it like, whoa, we have a Dexter Morgan here.
Exactly. What's going on here? All right. Also, too, it's fun to have these events, take place on such a big stage like the UFC Apex, and it's all primer for a great week like we have this week. LFA tonight, UFC 296 tomorrow. I mean, Colby Covington. I know he doesn't make a lot of friends in the MMA space. Maybe we'd see a different side of Colby Covington in jiu-jitsu. Probably not, but maybe.
Yeah, stylistically, right? It's the fun sport where, like you said, they're changing the rules where you have to be more active, you have to do it. And I love that about it where before I would watch jiu-jitsu and there'd be a lot of like stalling.
Yeah.
Now that you guys are changing it, we need action. So guys like Kobe can't just hold you against the fence. They have to go for his sub.
Right. Yeah.
And it'll give other guys openings to find and try to catch him with something else.
Yeah, absolutely. So check out the FPI. It's available for you right now on UFC Fight Pass. Claudia, while we got you here, do you mind if we talk about the co-main event tomorrow?
Let's do
a little bit. Let's talk about it. Alexandre Pantoja, he's defending his title for the first time after he took it off Brandon Moreno. He takes on a familiar foe in Brandon Royval, mentioning choking people out. Pantoja owns the first meeting between these two, rear naked choke victory. Let's start with you, Claudia. Pantoja, a guy that is all action, incredibly fun to watch. Your thoughts on his first title defense against Brandon Royval?
I'm very curious to see how he's going to perform in there. I actually know Pantoja from back in Brazil 10 years ago, and I never thought he was going to become that level of a fighter, But I think, when you win a title like he did, you go back home and you really come back different,
Right.
The statistics talks about it, right? So I'm excited and curious to see how he's going to perform, but I think he could beat his opponent.
Yeah, Bilal, your thoughts on the fact that they have this meeting beforehand where Pantoja has a stoppage victory. I mean, how much of a confidence boost is that for him going into this fight second time with Royval?
It tells you that I could beat you, and I had that one up on you mental game, right? Whenever I've had rematches before where I've lost the first one and the second one, it's like I need to train that much harder. For Royval, I think his style is just so chaotic that he puts himself in bad spots. Even that first fight, they were going back and forth a lot. So I think for Royval, it's just changing, all right, let me be a little bit calmer here. But you got a guy in Pantoja who's not going to let you be calm. Pantoja's going to be in your face 24/7 the whole fight, and he's going to bring that same style you have, but he just has, I think, more of a finishing ability in those. If he hits your back, you're not going to get away. So I think for Royval, it's just switching it up a little bit, not getting into that chaotic mode. Your first title fight, you're 5 rounds, you got plenty of time. Don't let Pantoja pull you into his world of chaos. Oh, now he took my back. Now I'm going to try to get out real quick and get impatient, and then he takes my neck. I think the way that Pantoja fought his last fight was crazy. The pace he kept up after that first round, I was like, how is this guy doing this for 5 rounds?
Right.
Against a warrior like Moreno, who's nonstop as well. I think this fight's just going to be all chaos.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like Brandon Moreno is this, static common denominator that's never going to go away in this division. Pantoja got the win last time, but Moreno is a guy that is so good. He can beat anybody on any given night, and I don't want to necessarily say he's the #1 contender, but I wouldn't be upset with him fighting either of these guys.
Oh, I agree. And, the idea for Pantoja to not only did he win the championship, but you just beat Brandon Moreno in order to do so. And I think for Royval, I think your points are very well taken about the patience. But Kenny Florian was talking this week just about how Royval might need to look for the finish right out of the gate. Pantoja was poised and smart even with the chaos in that fight against Moreno. And I think, Royval, I love Brandon Royval, love his game. I think he's deserving. Another guy, right, you compare your resume to a guy like that. This guy's getting a title shot, right? hadn't won 9 straight last, I thought. So I think it's a big step up in competition for Royval. And I think he's got to be very aggressive. Otherwise, I think Pantoja takes him into deep places.
And I don't want to go anywhere for any prolonged period of time with Alexandre Pantoja because he's just going to make it suck for anybody standing in their way. Any prediction, Claudia? You want to make a prediction?
I'll go with Pantoja. You know, you mentioned his back takes, and they are pretty amazing. Like I've seen throughout his career, he taking everybody's back and just choking people out. So I will take the risk to say Pantoja by rear naked choke.
A repeat of the first go-around, the same way and everything. Bilal, your thoughts?
I'm going to have to agree with her. I think that he's just so good at finding the back. There's guys that they'll try to force it. He just figures out a way to get there. And once he gets there, that's his home. He's a backpack. He's Damian Maia.
Right.
And I think that he's going to find it again this time.
Nothing I like more than seeing a new champion. A new champion, however, I think it is and still Alexandre Pantoja. You know, his wife doesn't have to work anymore. I just think he is in a great place. I think he reigns.
All right, let's take a look at the odds courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook and let us know if the champ is as big of a favorite as he is here in extra rounds, and it looks like it. Minus 192 for Pantoja. The comeback on Raw Dog, Brandon Royval, plus 160. DraftKings Sportsbook is the official sports betting partner of the UFC. New customers can bet just $5 and win $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app, use the code FightPass, and get in on the action today. UFC 296 is loaded with action, and one fight we haven't talked too much about on the way out from an X's and O's standpoint is Paddy the Baddy and Tony Ferguson. Claudia, I want to get your thoughts on this one.
I hate to talk about like fighters almost done in the career.
Right.
You know, like it's kind of like Tony has a history in the UFC. He's been a great competitor and champion for so long, but I think he's getting there, you know, to the point where he's almost retired, you know, and I hate to retire people,
sure,
right? Because I would hate to see other people saying the same thing about me, but Paddy's good, and Tony is just a great champion. So like I'm not sure what's gonna happen in there. You know, Tony walking out, like ending his career. Paddy has this star power that gets in the octagon and just pulls off amazing things. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in that one, honestly.
Yeah, Bilal, Paddy said this is kind of a lose-lose situation for him in the sense that Tony is a bit past his prime. A lot of people believe that Paddy's going to win. Paddy coming off that win over Jared Gordon, he probably wants to do it with style points. Is this a lose-lose situation, though, for Paddy the Baddy?
I don't think it is, because Tony Ferguson is still that name I want on my resume no matter what. At the end of your career, you say, hey, I had Tony Ferguson on my resume. I beat a guy who was on a 9-fight winning streak. Nobody's going to remember that, oh, Tony Ferguson was on his way out 7. They're not going to say that. They're just going to look at your record. I got a W against him, and especially if he gets a big finish. And people just, they don't believe in Paddy yet. But beating a guy like Tony, finishing a guy like Tony, I think that you're gonna have your haters no matter what. But the real fighters are like, all right, we believe in him, because Tony has lost to such great competition his last 4 or 5 fights. So Paddy goes out there, finishes them. You're gonna get fighters' respect.
We're never going to see another fighter in the UFC that can win 12 straight and then lose 6 straight at different stretches of his career. I just don't think we're ever going to see that again. I'm higher on Paddy Pimblett than most. And I also think for these young fighters, this year for Paddy Pimblett, I just saw a more mature guy in the press conference, right? He wasn't really even going in on it until sort of Tony went in on it. And I think it's actually a little bit of a blessing where, yeah, you get the win against Jared, maybe even though you didn't get the win. But I think Pimblett has a lot of different skills, and I think the star power might have overwhelmed a little bit of the skill in the big picture. So I'm looking forward to seeing this opportunity for him. I just want it to be Tony's swan song, win or lose.
All right, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun fight and a fun fight card, to say the least. UFC 296 goes down tomorrow, T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas. Tonight, though, it's LFA. It's actually going down just a couple minutes from right now. So get over to Fight Pass and make sure you watch it. But be back tomorrow for more extra rounds, as Jason Anik and Bilal Muhammad are going to join me again inside T-Mobile Arena as we get ready for UFC 296. Claudia, appreciate you stopping by, and can't wait for the next Fight Pass Invitational.
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. For all these guys, I'm TJ DeSantis. We'll see you next time for more extra rounds right here on UFC Fight Pass.